Hello, I'm Mary from the Botanic Nursery in Atworth, and I'm going to talk to you today about terrariums. These are little gardens within jars. They've been around for many years and were actually discovered quite by accident in the 1840s. So I tell you more about that if you get to come on one of our workshop classes. These are the closed terrariums, so there's a lid that goes over the top of them, and you could also grow beautiful plants in glass jars which are called open terrariums, so they're not sealed. And there's different types of plants that grow in each one. So I'm going to show you now just some of the ones that grow inside the enclosed ones. This is something called Hypestes. It's a lovely little foliage plant and has pretty flowers rather mindful of honeysuckle flowers, although because they're inside you won't be able to smell if they have any scent or not. But they have pretty foliages as well. This is quite a big family of plants here called Peperomia. They have lovely little variegated and veined leaves. This is a lovely pinky purple coloured one. And this is the same family, but it's much taller and just a green leaf which looks like teardrops. And this one here is the same one, same family, Peperomia. Long, fine green leaves, deeply veined, but the fun thing about this one is the back of the leaves are a lovely purple maroon colour. Other plants you often see in terrariums with miniature spider plants, if you like. This is called Chlorophytum. You have to make sure you use the miniature ones because the other ones get too big. And lots of different types of ferns you can use. Again, ferns are quite good growers, so they're ones that you will need to get the scissors out to trim down to keep them in check. And this little fella, one of my favourites, is called Cryptanthus. Now this looks like a little starfish and it's almost like a bromeliad really, but it's much smaller, much more slower growing, but it's very good for the base layer of your terrarium. So that's the plants we're going to be using today. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we need for the terrarium. Obviously you need some kind of container that can seal, kept sealed. You also need, in the base of the terrarium, some gravel. Let me just pop that in straight away. It is a good idea if you can actually get your hand in the top of the terrarium. They're very tricky when you've got to feed all this through narrow openings. But I'm going to put something like, I don't know, inches or centimetres today. Let's have a look. I'm going to put about 2 centimetres of this in the base there and just feed it around. You can get all sorts of different types of gravels, whatever suits you like the look of. We're using a Cornish grit, so that comes from Cornwall. So it's not one of those imported ones. The compost we have here is bark, and inside this it's very important that you put charcoal is added. Charcoal is like an antibacterial for this compost. If we just put the compost in, bacteria would start to form, and also helps the drainage of this and for the circulation of the roots of the plants, and keeps the compost nice and soft. So there's lots of black bits of charcoal in the compost. We need to put enough compost in to be able to plant the plants into it. So however you've done the gravel, maybe it's about just under an inch up. You want to need at least 2 inches of compost, so maybe about 5 centimetres. Thinking I'm just going to put a little bit more gravel in the bottom of this one actually. There we go. So that's kind of the gravel layer there, you can see. You can give it a little swirl round if you want to get it nice and even. Put your compost out of the way, and then we're going to start with the compost here. My gloves are a bit big. You don't need to wear them if you don't want to, but helps a little bit. Drop it in around the edges. And there we go, that's the base of where we're going to start. Look at that. So you can see the gravel and you can see the compost, hopefully. Ooh, back again. It's quite cold here today. So here's the terrarium, the gravel's in the base and the compost. And I've selected these 3 plants. I'm going to put one of the mini spider plants in, the little red leaf Peperomia and the big teardrop Peperomia. And I've got some moss here to put in afterwards. These are the tools. I'm going to show them all to you except I can only show you two of them because I've dropped one somewhere. These are curved tweezers. These come in your kit. They're stainless steel, lovely long length so you can get into the terrarium. And the tweezers are much the same, but they're not curved. These help you to hold the plant if you can't get your hand in. And an essential for all terrariums and for caring for them is these lovely long handled scissors like this, because you then get to snip off without disturbing them any leaves and things like that. And sometimes the plants grow a bit and you do actually need to trim them down. So I'm going to start with this one. This is the little spider plant. I'm going to take off some of the loose compost because I don't really need any of this compost in there. It's going to quite happily establish into the soil that's already in there. Let's have a quick look. And so you need to make a little hole with your implements. The first one's always the easiest one to put in, and then you can grab hold of it like that and gently but quite firmly at the same time push it down into place. And if you can get your hand in, you can just put your hands in there and just push it right down. The hole you're making needs to go right down to the gravel layer. You don't just want to make a little hole right at the top. They need to be reasonably firmly pressed into the compost. So there's the first plant in. Don't worry about arranging it, you just need to get it in. And I'm going to put the little red one in next to it. This is the other red peperomia. Making a nice hole for it. This is the fun part, you can be quite creative. There is room for a fourth plant in here, but to be honest, if you put too many in, they will compete for the root space. Any big leaves like this one, you can take them off before you first put them in. Otherwise you'll end up taking them off anyway in a few days' time. Pop that into its hole. Move the compost around to try and keep it reasonably neat. As I say, I've dropped some compost on top of the leaf, but I'm not going to do anything about it just yet. We'll leave that. So there's two in there now. I'm just going to show you what to do about this one. This is quite a big plant actually. So I think I'm going to break it down a bit because they grew so quickly. We didn't have anything small enough to put in. Break it in half, and if you get one of these from us, if that's what you choose, and you can do that yourself. Pot up the other half and you've got an extra free house plant. So there we go, that's a nice size to put in there. It's got quite fleshy leaves, so sometimes this one can get a little bit damaged. Don't worry, you're not going to hurt it by pulling off all this loose compost that I'm doing here. So that's the size of the plant that I'm actually putting in there. Making another hole with my curved tweezers. Yeah, this is nice compost. It's not too dense and it does move around easily, so it allows you to pop the plant in easily. And it's always the last one that's slightly trickier to put in. Probably should use the tweezers, but I do find my fingers a little easier sometimes. And I can just push it down a little bit into place. There we go. You'll notice also that we've not put any water in this yet, and in fact we're not really going to put very much in at all. If we do put any in, put it in a couple of days' time. So I mentioned about the two different types of terrarium right at the very beginning. The one we've been making is the closed terrarium. This is an open one, and it's quite exciting because you can put different types of plants in here. Here I've got an aloe, and I've got some a sedum and an echeveria in here, as well as the hypestes is in here as well. You can grow plants that like drier conditions in these open ones, but it's basically the principle is the same. You have the gravel, you have your charcoal filled compost, and then you have some moss and pop your plants in. But that's another one, but I'm not actually showing you how to make those today because it's much the same as the other one. Right, so all the plants are in place, and what I need to do now is just to make it look pretty. It helps the environment of the terrarium if you put a bit of moss around the plants. If you don't want to, you don't need to use it, but it does look pretty and it does help the environment when it's sealed. As I said, we haven't put any water in it yet. You will find there is a certain amount of moisture, especially in the moss, when you put it in, and then you're going to seal it, and let's see what happens after a day or two. If it's is very foggy and damp, then there might be, and it's not clearing at all, then there's too much moisture in there, so you need to leave the lid off for 2 or 3 days. It could take 7 to 10 days to actually settle down into place, and you'll often see it's quite normal for moisture to collect around the edges here, and that trickles back down into the environment of the pot and circulates, and the process starts again and again. But I'll go into more detail about that if you're able to come along to one of our workshops. So I'm just going to pop the moss in. You could use the tweezers or your fingers on this one. I say if your jar that you're using is wide enough to get your hand in, it's easy enough. But smaller ones, the tweezers are much better. Actually, I'm going to use the tweezers for that bit there. Push it down around the sides. There we go. Another thing that sometimes happens is that you get a bit of compost and things around the edge of the glass when you're working there, so you can get some kitchen roll and just go around the edges, and that will help to clean them up. Oh, I need to pick off some compost that's stuck in there. Let's have a look. There we go. Okay, the scissors are particularly useful. As the plants start to grow, some of these leaves can get a little bit tall, and you want to keep the plant in check, if you like. It's a bit like pruning, and it's such a relaxing thing to do. I had such fun the other evening. Terry was really laughing at me, but I just sat down playing with the couple of the ones that I'd made up, cleaning them all up, and I was having quite a relaxing time. It's very therapeutic. So if you're not getting any fogging and anything like that, the terrarium is perfectly happy. And I said, if you find it's getting too wet, you need to leave the lid open. Ideally, once you've closed this lid, you won't need to water it very frequently at all. You'll probably find, again, depending on the environment of your home, if it's a constant temperature at all, it'll settle down very happily. But if, like our house, it gets pretty cold in the daytime and then the heating comes on in the winter months, you'll find that it fogs up a little bit more, and you seem to, in those environments, need to open it up maybe once a month or so, just to change the air around. But you don't really need to do that. You'll be able to see for yourself how it's settling down. But don't be alarmed if it takes, you know, a week to 10 days to settle into place. You can water it now. If you want to put some water in, you're literally talking about a tablespoonful. That's not very much, is it? 30-40 mils of water is more than enough to keep this going. So there's our terrarium. Hope you enjoy it. It does look rather pretty, actually. Very pretty. So it's fogging up at the bottom here at the moment because it's so cold here at the nursery in the polytunnels. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned a little bit about how to make terrariums. I hope that I can welcome you to one of our workshops in December. So unfortunately, due to current government regulations, we're not holding the November ones. If you can't come along, you can actually buy this kit online, and it'll all get sent quite securely. You get up to 5 plants, so you'll have some spare ones left that you can just pot on and grow as house plants as well. And you also get, as I said earlier, the kit, which is 3 pieces, I promise you, not just 2. If you don't want them, just email us and we will put some extra plants or something in instead. You can find more information by looking at our website, which is thebotanicnursery.co.uk, and you can email me at info@botanicnursery.co.uk if you want any more advice or to ask any questions. So hope you've enjoyed this little presentation on terrariums. Thank you.